So now that we know how to study and what to study for take-homes, it's time for us to consider the final prep stages before you take the take-home exam. What do you actually need to do immediately before the exam happens to get ready? Well, first things first, have a designated study and workspace. Studies have shown that when we are able to replicate our study environment in our test-taking environment, we tend to do better on the test. So one study suggests that if you are chewing gum while you study, it is wise to chew the same flavor of gum while taking the test, because that's going to help build a mental link in your brain between what was studied and what you need to now remember in the exam. In the same way, if you are able to study in the same location where you write the exam, you are potentially more likely to remember the stuff better than if you studied in a totally different room in your house. It's also important to make sure that that area is take-home ready. By that I mean that you are able to actually do the take-home well. So you have reliable internet there. You have everything plugged in properly, especially if you're working on a laptop. The last thing you want is for it to conk out halfway through and then you lose all your progress. You want it to be a location that's quiet. And that actually brings us to our next point. Avoid distractions when you're about to take the exam. So your phone, put it on the other side of the room. Put it in a different room. Make sure that you can't be accessed. And as much as you're able, try to make it an environment where you are free from the distraction of other people around you as well. So roommates, parents, kids. I recognize that's not always easy, and there are often needs that you just can't put aside in that moment. But as much as you're able, tell the people around you that this time is a time that you need to focus on the exam and that you can help them with whatever they need afterwards. Another key thing to do in advance is double check your exam instructions. And by that, I don't mean like the instructions for the questions. I mean the details that you need to know about writing the exam. So, when does the exam start? When does it finish? How are you supposed to submit it? Is there a particular file type that you have to submit it as? What time is it due? That time one is especially important if you are a student that doesn't live in the same time zone as Tyndale. 11:59 p.m. is 11:59 p.m. Tyndale time, not necessarily the time of the time zone that you live in. So make sure you're paying attention to those details even before you started the exam so that you know what to do. And finally, have your notes ready. Before the exam has even begun, take 5 minutes, sit down, have your computer ready, have your notes pulled up on the screen or on the notebook in front of you ready to go. Have your textbooks beside you and have any websites you're allowed access to ready to go as well. Because the last thing you want is to spend the first 5 minutes of the exam hunting for all of your information rather than just doing that in advance and being ready to go as soon as the exam starts. So that's prepping for the exam. Now let's talk about writing the exam. What are the strategies you can adopt to write your take-home exam well? Well, just like any other exam, the first step is to read your instructions carefully. And I cannot stress this enough. I can't tell you how often students lose marks on exams because they don't read the instructions. They don't realize that they only have to answer 2 of the following 3 questions instead of all 3. They don't realize that the multiple choice is only worth 20% and then the essay is worth 80%. So you probably want to devote significantly more time to the 80% portion than the 20% portion. And read all of the sections before you even begin so you know what you're getting into before you start. Second, maintain a high quality of writing. I recognize this only applies to, say, short answer and essay exams, but it is crucial. Remember how I said earlier that your professors are writing the exams knowing that you have your textbooks and your notes? Well, the same goes for marking. They are going to expect more of you because they know that you have more information at your disposal than if you had to do everything from memory in class. Of course, the length of the exam will also be a factor. So if you only have 3 hours to write the exam, they're not necessarily going to expect as much detail as if you had 3 days to write the exam. But regardless, they will be expecting a little bit more time. So think through your answers carefully and clearly when you're writing. Similarly, if you're writing an in-class exam, you're just doing it by hand. But if you're doing it on the computer, you have spell check. So make sure that you're paying a bit more attention to spelling and grammar because those things are going to matter more when you have the tools at your disposal to do better at them. Another tip, don't go overboard on research. See, sometimes students have a tendency, because it's a take-home exam and they have the internet available to them, to research and to find the answers that way. But that's not what exams are typically about. Exams are supposed to be about what you have learned in class and what you have read in your readings. So, Unless your professor has asked for it, I would usually avoid researching. If they ask for it, different story. By all means, do your research. That's important. But otherwise, assume that you can answer based off of the textbooks and based off of what you've learned in class. But in that vein, if you are going to bring in something from another source, or if you're going to directly reference something in your textbook, make sure that you cite it. And more importantly, cite it correctly. Just because it's an exam doesn't mean that citation is off the table. Now, sometimes your professors will say, don't worry about citation, it's an exam, just get the information down. But if you are doing something directly from the textbook, say you're quoting something, or if you do bring in a piece of research, you are going to want to cite that correctly. Because if you don't, it can be considered plagiarism, and that's going to be a problem. This is especially important for exams that happen over multiple days. A lot of times then your professors will expect a little bit more in the way of citation. So please don't neglect that. Make sure that you paraphrase properly and that you quote properly, because now that you're not in a classroom setting and you actually have the tools at your disposal, your professors will be expecting proper citation styles. And finally, one last tip as you get ready for your exams: balance your time. And I mean that both in your exam individually and exam season as a whole. As I said before, you might want to prioritize those sections of the exam that are worth more marks because they are worth more marks. You don't want to be spending 50% of your time on something only worth 20% of your grade. It's just not a good balance of time. But as we're thinking about exams as a whole, you're going to want to figure out how to fit studying and exam writing into your life. If you're a full-time student, you're going to have multiple exams that you're writing, maybe multiple take-homes, some of which are 3 hours long, some of which might be a day long, maybe a week long, and all of those are going to have to get done. Or maybe you have a full-time job or a part-time job that you have to complete alongside doing all of your exams. So it's extremely important that you actually take that time to make a schedule. Spend time and figure out, when am I going to study for different exams and when am I going to actually write them? Because if you take that time to plan that out in advance, it's going to make things a lot more manageable, especially if you do have overlapping deadlines. If you have 3 exams due within a 2-day period, you're going to want to budget, when am I going to work on each of them? When am I going to devote time to studying, to writing, to planning, so that you know how to do it. But don't forget to take care of yourself as well. Make sure you find that time to rest, to work out, to spend time with family, to connect with a friend, to go for a run, whatever it's going to take to help you stay in a good mental state and complete these exams well. Which brings me to my final point: don't put off studying. It's very easy, especially with take-homes, to think, I don't have to worry about it. Like I said at the beginning, it doesn't seem as intimidating because you don't have to memorize everything. But taking that time to study and devoting time to writing these exams well is going to make the difference between an okay exam season and a good exam season. So please take that time to schedule out when you're going to do it, and start on some of that even now. As soon as you know what your exam schedule is going to look like, it is worth beginning to come up with a plan so that you can tackle it to the best of your ability. But that's all I have to say about take-home exams for today. If you do have any questions, feel free to send us an email at writing@tyndale.ca and we will get back to you as quick as we can with some information. Unfortunately, we can't actually read through take-home exam questions or submissions with you. That's something you have to do on your own because it is an exam, but we are happy to help you with any of the prep stages of coming up with sample questions or trying to come up with ideas that you think might be on the exam. We'd love to brainstorm some of that with you. But whether you're in the middle of exam season now or you're just looking to brush up on your skills, I wish you all the best as you continue this journey of becoming a better student and a better exam writer. Take care and happy writing.